actually started trading only about 6 years ago. I read every book I could lay my hands on and went to a course and listened to a lot of people on webinars or websites and things like that, YouTube. And so I had a lot of thoughts and things. And I have to say, the training I got was pretty good. It gave me all the basics of trading. But it also gave me so many different ideas. And I spent the first 2 or 3 years testing out a lot of different things. By testing, not back testing, but just trying different things out. So trading every different instrument, trading different time frames, commodities, indices, FX, including CFDs, real money. But I didn't have a back-tested system. So I was trying all the stuff, and I didn't lose a lot of money. But I didn't achieve what you've talked about a lot, which is consistently successful and peaceful as well. Because you're agonizing it, because you don't know, you don't have the faith in your system. And that was my problem. I was basically sports all my life, pretty much. Started off as a very young person. I taught phys ed and economics. That was my teaching role just for a few years. But I love sports so much that I did an MBA as well at the University of Queensland. So I worked in national sports organizations with skating. And also my last job in England was the chief executive for the National Small Ball Rifle Association, which is, of course, a sport which is in the Olympic Games. And they love the small ball shooting. But I also did events. We were bringing big events to Queensland. We learned a lot about candlesticks and this and that and all the rest of it. But we didn't learn the fact that to really trade, you needed to have a back-tested system over a variety of conditions, over 20, 30 years, and so on. Then I would have the trust in that. And I didn't get that till I followed you. I joined Beyond Charts and yourself, this particular SPA3 system, just over 4 years ago. But again, for the first 2 years, I was still trying all these other things as well and breaking your lovely system. And then I think I met you and David at a thing that you came up to Brisbane with about 1.5 or 2 years ago, or something like that. And I think that changed. I thought, no, I've really just got to focus on taking these signals as and when they come up, regardless of anything. And you know what? It's the best I've done. My US account was up to over 30% in the last few months. It's come down a bit now since I started it, which was only about 1.5 years ago. I can't complain about that. So obviously, the difference is I'm just following the signals without any interruptions. That's okay, actually, because of what I learned. And Mark Douglas was another hero of mine because I read his book. I listened to countless of his YouTube videos. It was great that you had that association with him because I thought he was brilliant. I think he mentioned one thing to you. You were with him one day and you asked him the question about how many people who attended this seminar that you've just done would go away and do those first 25 trades. And he said, lucky if you get one. And that's the problem with people, including myself, I guess. We listen to all this stuff, but we don't actually go away and do it. You've stressed that in your 4-week intensive course about the importance of doing it, the importance of learning those fundamental truths of Mark Douglas's. That's made a big difference. The turning point for me was meeting you and David a couple of years ago when you went around the country, I think, doing some things. You and David were consistent in terms of pressing home the point about what you should be doing with the James Clear and the Mark Douglas's truths and so on and so forth, what he was espousing. And James Clear with his habits, it balanced it nicely. I'd never heard of James Clear. And then I got his book and it was good. And of course, the work he did with the mind and how people make decisions. And I thought, well, I need to get my head down on SPA3 investor. Forget about all this other nonsense with FX and CFDs and all that. Still, the one thing I have mentioned it already, which was basically no faith in the systems, no faith in the systems. And even with yours, because of my first 2 or 3 years, trying everything, you can't shove responsibility on somebody else. It was my decision to trade all these things, even though we were encouraged to try all these things until you settle down, find what suits you personality-wise. And I guess CFDs and short-term trading does suit some people, but doesn't suit me. And then I tried all these other things with FX commodities and indices and so on. I just hadn't settled on one thing. I found your SPA3 investor. The first thing I read about was you're dealing with the big stocks and you're dealing with ETFs. I love the IVV, the S&P 500. In fact, I loved it so much. I bought 2 of my eldest grandchildren back when they got to a certain age and said, yeah, hang on to that now because you're young enough. Even if it goes down, it's going to come back up again. So don't worry about it. I think it's both. One, on the SPA3 investor, I've seen your record and I've seen what it does over the last 30 years. And yes, you're going to have the down years and so on, but it still outperforms the market in those years anyway. I'm at the stage now where I've got to be careful that my money doesn't crash with a GFC crisis. So I'm very careful, but I like the idea of you have not just the growth stocks, but you can go the other way and put some into IVVs of this world and things like that. I'd already had put money into the IVV, and it has improved immensely in the last 2 years, 3 years. So much my grandson, who I bought a share for him, and the first year, it actually made him 32%. That was a couple of years back. And he said, wow, great. I said, yeah, now you go and get a job, part-time job. Give me $500 a year and I'll buy you one stock every year. And I said, then you can work it out. If you do that every year for the next 40 years of your life or 45 years of your life, see what it, and he did the sums and he said, it's millions. I said, there you go. You just learned out the idea of the eighth wonder of the world. So when you're about 60 years old or 65 years old, you say, thank God for this. You're teaching a life lesson. That's all. Really. Well, with your help, I feel I'm getting much, much better prepared than I would have been a couple of years ago, because I asked you a question and your answer to me was great. Thank you very much for that, because it said within the long-term bear market, you've got these little uptrends as well, and your system can catch those. But what I want to do is also create a few other systems to trade whichever way the market goes. So with that kind of side work that I'll do, not leaving the SPA3 system alone at all, because one of the fundamental truths that Mark Douglas keeps talking about, which I had ringing in my head constantly, was anything can happen and all the rest of it. And the thing that got me going, though, was reversed my idea about the backtesting, because I think it was fundamental truth 3, where he talks about there are a random set of wins and losses for every sort of edge, as it were. And that's basically your system. So if you change it, then you're throwing it out. But that's my life. It's not just for when you're 19, 20, 21, 22. It's for life. I don't mind trying to learn anything at my stage of life as well, as however little or long I might still have. And I love to learn new things. And trading was new to me. And I think I've learned a lot in the last 5 or 6 years. And I've learned a heck of a lot in the last 2 or 3 years with it yourself and so on. And Mark Douglas, of course, even though he goes back, I heard that statement, which I've already mentioned to you now. But what Mark Douglas said was he didn't expect many people who spend all that money, listen to him, go away, do nothing. And that was a trigger for me, because okay, I've got to do it. I think that's a really important point. My belief hasn't changed, that I don't mind changing. I haven't got it all. I'm not perfect by a long, long, long way. And so nobody is perfect. We can all change. But you have to accept the fact that you can change first before you start trying to change your belief. A lot of people know it all. They think they know it all, and they don't. And that's why you got to keep an open mind. With an open mind, you can change your beliefs. And in fact, that was his main focus, I think. He said, even what I'm telling you, he says, it's not necessarily the truth. Only you can decide that, because you have to decide whether you accept something or don't accept it, you reject it. And that goes back a long way, like the sort of Mark Douglas story about the little boy with the dog, where he gets bitten. That's the analogy, isn't it? He has this false belief that all dogs are bad and all the rest of it. Well, it's the same sort of thing applies to trading. You have one experience and you think that's going to be the experience all the time, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. You know, psychology is unbelievable, isn't it? It's all about psychology. The mistake they make is they're looking for perfection, isn't it? Somebody I read, it could have been Van Pump, looking for the Holy Grail. There's no Holy Grail. Just keep on working towards something which is going to give you, which is enough to make you happy. Don't be greedy. Just what do you want? And be happy and go on with it. Beat the markets, and this is more easily done. Beat the fund managers. And unfortunately, a lot of people have money still with fund managers. I have, and mutual funds and things, but fund managers particularly, they cost you in fees and they cost you because they're underperforming the market. It doesn't matter, because the analogy with being a casino depends on how often you trade, because casinos, they have a very minimal edge, but they make millions because people are there putting their money in all the time. You had the analogy, or you throw the snowballs at the wall, right? Some will stick, some will fall off. Keep on throwing it, and eventually it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the kind of trading, the number of trades you do. To answer your question, it doesn't really matter how big the edge is, as long as you keep on taking your signals and keep on trading. I mentioned to me trading other ways by backtesting, finding new systems, new ideas. to trade other markets maybe and so on, other than the US or even Australia. But I like the US particularly at the moment. I think not even at the moment. Traditionally, they've always been better than Australia. I know there's been the odd year or two where Australia's done well. But I need to have faith in my system, which is where we started this conversation. I haven't had that with anything else. I was flying by the seat of my pants, really, at the start. That's not the way to do it. So SPA3 investor system and the intensive course you and David ran, great, because it focused the mind. But I want to find a few other things, but only because I'm interested, because it's interesting. But I need to put some more money into the American market using this particular one, because I haven't put everything in it by any means. I can put a bit more. And for that, I needed that trust and faith in what was going on. And that started when I met you and David, that time, face to face, and you gave a great sort of summary of all that you had done. That was a turning point.